Welcome to Lit It Up with Rajeshwari Kalyanam. Today I'm going to talk about a book, Pokhran, which is based on the true event of the nuclear test, the silent nuclear test that happened in India, in Rajasthan at Pokhran. It was codenamed Smiling Buddha. Based on this true event that has been a major event in making India the nuclear power, Uday Singh, a US based economist, philosopher, and author, has weaved a fictional story which has conspiracy theories, hidden secrets, radio fallout, and all the thrilling moments that possibly it could have. So, I'll be reading an extract from the book, and we will also be talking to the author. Pokhran, India's first nuclear test, happened 46 years ago on May 18, 1974. Uday Singh's book has an extract which relives this moment of the Pokhran. I shall be reading a part of it and then we will go on to Mr. Uday Singh and see what he has to talk about the book. Anish, the smiling Buddha is all yours. Balbir handed over the authorization papers to Anish Saxena, a tall, lanky man in his 50s with sunken eyes and an elongated face. A mask was covering his nose and mouth, and gloves over his hands made him look like a surgeon about to go into an operating theatre. He was the commanding officer for hooking up the detonation coils, sensors, and performing countdown checks prior to the detonation of the device. Anish and his team of electrical engineers had practiced this task with a blank prototype in preparation for this day. They were ready, or at least as ready as they could possibly be. There was a ton of TNT loaded in the bomb and there was no room for error. Take off the tarpaulin, Anish ordered, revealing the bomb as Balbir looked on. This was the first time Balbir got to lay his eyes on the smiling Buddha, as it was hoisted on a concrete block with curved surface to accommodate the spherical shape of the bomb that was about 4 feet across and weighed about 1.5 tons. Balbir's chest swelled with pride at being a part of this historic moment for India. We have exactly 1 hour to hook up the 20 detonators to the detonation coil and start the eel gauges and the sensors. Go! Anish blasted the order and his team got busy connecting the bomb to the central distribution coil that was connected to the switch in the basement of Fort Balagar. Their practice and expertise was on full display as the team moved about effortlessly, completing about 1,000 electrical connections in less than 1 hour, and by the time the clock struck 4 a.m., they all had stopped working. The bomb was all connected and ready to be powered up. Anish and Balbir thanked their teams for a job well done and got into the military jeep that was waiting to take them to the basement in the Pokhran fort. Back at the fort, the officers and scientists started trickling into the command center, a windowless large room in the basement with pink granite walls, makeshift chairs and tables arranged like in a classroom, and getting themselves comfortable in their designated stations, monitoring the various aspects of detonating the bomb and collecting data from the gauges and the sensors before and after the blast. The waiters were around to serve coffee and tea and snacks for anyone who was up so early in the morning. At the head of the makeshift command center were 10 television sets and 9 of them showing the footage of Ground Zero from different angles on the surface and one showing the bomb itself as it sat beautifully nestled in its concrete bed. Narendra, in a crisp white shirt and perfectly parted grey hair, looked well rested, even though he had hardly slept, coordinating the delivery and installation of the bomb in its place throughout the night. In stark contrast, Subramaniam, with his groggy eyes and disheveled hair, looked even more like an absent-minded professor than he did on the previous night at the dinner. His mind was restlessly running through the various aspects of the bomb design and detonation sequences and the potential consequences if the test failed, and more importantly, the consequences if it succeeded. Despite the wee hours of the morning, the excitement and the energy in the room was palpable. As the clock struck 4, Narendra asked, "Are we ready to begin running the tests?" looking at Subramaniam. Subramaniam nodded in agreement and signaled his team to start the tests. Structural integrity okay, or reported the mechanical engineering team. Seismographs in all the locations? Okay, came the geology team. Detonation coil 1 okay, and so on. The reports started coming in from the different teams monitoring different aspects of the smiling Buddha. At 8, by 8, the warm sun was already up and villagers were going about their morning chores, oblivious of the very thing that was to change their lives forever. The tests were complete and all the systems were ready to go. Suddenly, the silence and the anticipation in the command center was interrupted by the loud ringing of the telephone that was at the center of the room. Narendra got up from his seat and walked up to the telephone as he was waiting for this call. Miss Prime Minister, we are all set to go. Do we have your confirmation? He asked of the caller. Yes, you have my confirmation. Good luck and make us proud. Jai Hind. The sure voice of Mrs. Gandhi, the then Indian Prime Minister, came over the speakers, filling the entire room. The whole room erupted in applause and shouts of Jai Hind in concert with her. Begin the countdown, echoed Narendra as he hung up the phone. Once the countdown was complete, Narendra walked up and positioned himself near the red detonation button. Despite his years of military training and forceful personality, one could see his hand tremble as it reached down and pushed the button at precisely 8:05 a.m. There was a sudden gasp and then total silence in the room. Nobody moved as anticipation was unbearable. And then, boom. Well, Silent Buddha was set off. What a name to give to a nuclear bomb. Somebody had a very queer sense of humor in the team, apparently. Anyway, Uday Singh, the author of the book, has used this real event to weave a story, a fictional story, with all thrilling movements, as I told you earlier. And now I will be giving this conversation over to Mr. Uday Singh, and he will be talking about the book, what made him write it, his inspiration, and so on.
It's undeniable that both the nuclear tests of 1974 and 1998 are a phenomenal success, both from a patriotic perspective as well as from a technological advancement perspective, right? So I do take great pride in it, and as almost every other Indian does, right? But the huge success did have a cost, right? Like I guess every dark cloud has a silver lining. The opposite also true. Every silver lining has a dark cloud. So in this case, there was collateral impact, right? The impact was felt by the communities around the region of Pokhran. And there wasn't enough done. There were studies done, there was impact assessed, but not as much as it should have been. And there was denial from the government that that there are no significant side effects, right? But there was a study by R.J. Sharma in 1984 to 88, and that did talk about significant cases, significantly higher cases of rare forms of cancer, as well as higher incidence of blindness, both among men and women, as well as there are studies in Trinity area from Los Alamos or Hiroshima blast, where you do see that the after effects of the radioactive fallout linger, right? So I've used that as a platform to give voice to the folks that that do not have a voice, right? And at the same time, I didn't want this to be a documentary about just the ill effects, right? The whole goal was, how do we move forward? How do we take something that's a success, but that had a negative impact to it? How do we turn that around and make something positive come out of it? So this is the book is a thriller about the protagonist Chaitanya, who is born with significant disabilities because of the nuclear fallout, and then he goes about facing significant diversity and coming out ahead of it, right? And in the process, there is dramatic fiction that's created, but also it sets the stage for other interesting topics to discuss that India should be focused on, right? At this point, where we are reaching a significant level on the world stage, we should be looking outward. We have done enough introspection, and we should continue to do that, but we should also be looking outside. And things we should involve ourselves in our world affairs, right? For example, wherever folks are persecuted, we should have a voice in there, and we should lend a helping hand. For example, in the case of refugees that are not getting a place to stay in the world, so to say, right? And that's what the book talks about the Yazidis as an example. That's not the only one, but that's one group, right? And then it also sets the stage for addressing economic inequality, the generational build-up of economic inequality that you see in India and in most democracies now. Right? The upside of the capitalistic democracies is that you can achieve any height that you want, and that's a great thing, and we should preserve that. But we should also be cautioning and warding ourselves against the danger of a huge gap between the rich and the poor, which set the stage, at least historically has set the stage for bloody revolutions, right? Be it the French Revolution, be it the Bolsheviks, be it the Khmer Rouge, they all have genesis in a small section of the population getting too much power and too much wealth, right? So the book, in a very tongue-in-cheek way, proposes the concept of paracracy, which the protagonist kind of sets up the stage for, right? The new form of government is paracracy, where all the citizens start their life at 21, with zero wealth, right? So, and that way, everybody starts the beginning of the game of life at the same level. Nobody starts very close to the finish line, which is what would happen if you inherit a lot of wealth, or if you do not have any wealth, you are starting at the bottom. But this way, everybody starts at the same level, and they can achieve any great height they want that they are capable of, right? So the flip side of it, or in order to support this, such a society will have no inheritance, right? Inheritance is the other side of bonded labor. If we said no to parental debt or loans, we should also be saying no to parental wealth, and that is the concept that the book propounds, among other things. At the end of the day, the book, instead of being a documentary, is fiction, also to lend itself for broader adoption, right? Making it more richer and more degrees of freedom for me to talk about different topics without having to be straitjacketed into one thing. And given enough interest, which there is, the aspiration is to translate this into a movie format so that it has a much larger audience that it can reach. And the hope is that it will start an active debate and discussion around what kind of a world power we want to be, which we're almost predestined to be, given the size of our population, the type of people, and the productivity our country has. Now it's time for us to start talking about how do we make improvements for quality of living both inside the country and in the world, and also how do we contribute back to improving forms of governance so that it becomes a model state, right? It's not a foregone conclusion that economic inequality must and should exist, because that has been historically the case. That doesn't have to be the case, and that's what I set out to do through the book Pokhran.